or the fumbling of the draft constitution. You are someone who's been observing keenly. What did you make of the idea or the fact members of the National Assembly rejected the charter?
Thank you. Very pertinent question. I think if nothing was wrong, we would not have called for a transition which allowed us to vote in a new president. It was a vote of no confidence for the last administration. So we decided we need a transition. What is a transition? Change from what was to what ought to be over a period so that we can go back to normalcy. Key amongst these things is a constitution. So Gambia needed to usher a third republic. Hence the reason we all say the new Gambia, including the president himself. You cannot have a new Gambia without a new constitution. The president campaigned on that as part of his transitional reform agenda. And after that, we received a lot of funding to make sure we draft a constitution and allow the population to have consensus around it so that we can have a document adopted and owned by the polity. We went around the world looking for funds, and we had funds. What this constitution lacked, the draft lacked, is a bona fide sponsor. What is a sponsor? Someone who takes the document, claims ownership, and fights for the survival of the document. This current government and administration made this document a destitute, made this document an orphan, because they provided the document to the parliament without the requisite support it needed to be taken seriously. What happened? Personal political agendas superseded the collective good, and Gambia collectively will pay for this. Why? The document we have today that people were jubilating, the 1997 Constitution, had draconian laws that a lot of people suffer, including the media. Criminal laws, libel and other things that made people to be criminalized without being criminal. What did we do? We shoved the draft that was going to give us a more equitable and a liberal society and a better social contract for the people to opt for what we fought for and said enough of that. The controversy and the paradox is selfishness by people who should make this country better, our political class.
But here is the strange or the interesting thing about this entire issue. This is the government that promised to deliver on this piece of promise. And you are saying it didn't receive the backing or the support from this very government that promised to deliver this. Why that twist? Well, that dramatic twist?
There is no dramatic twist. It's an intentional, deliberate twist to change the narrative. The narrative was, we will elect a president who will manage a transition. And in managing the transition, he will be an arbiter, a referee, a neutral party to make sure that there is no political or vested economic interest in him to defer, slow down the people's will for a new republic. We had many transitional pillars, Janneh Commission, TRRC, CRC. The moment he decided to extend his welcome based on what he campaigned, that's when this draft became a destitute, because it cannot and it will not have a sponsor if it doesn't suit the dress and the color he wants the draft to look like. Plain, old and simple.
Now, what do you make of the role of the if you look at how it all played out at the National Assembly, you have MPs that are largely opposition. I mean, but in as much as they are opposition, you have some that voted for the draft, while you have others that voted against the draft. But the entire time you have MPs that are, I mean, independent MPs that are purely there to defend whatever is President Barrow's interest, if you like. And these are the MPs these are the MPs that coalesced to ensure that this thing is not, but doesn't succeed. But not just that, what also happened is that there was a problem with this charter. That's the argument. This document was a faulty one. They clearly could not agree with the fact that the way and manner it was cobbled did not serve the interests, or if someone would call it the rights of the president.
Well, then there must have been a dereliction of duty by the MPs. The CRC Act was brought to life by them creating the Act, right? And once the Act was created, it called for a framework, how the Constitution will be. That's where the consultation started. They created thematic themes and groups, not groups, but thematic themes for people to talk about, including the MPs. They had bilateral consultations with all arms of government. They created a draft, and after the draft, they created a review period, which any MP who happened to have a problem with the draft can do that. After that, after the review, it was brought to the Assembly. And at the Assembly, the role of politicians, especially lawmakers, is to build consensus through compromise. So they have failed Gambia. They have failed the citizenry because we haven't been given a chance to say what we think about the document. And mind you, the MPs are nothing but mere proxies of the people. What they do there is not to serve what they think, but to serve the aspirations and expectations of the people they represent. Hence, the reason we call it the People's House.
But don't you also think that the people also give the MPs a lot of problems? This idea of, I don't know where you stand on this, but this idea of the MPs had no right to touch anything in terms of, because clearly the MPs wanted to push for certain amendments, certain changes in the document. But there was this whole claim out there that they had no right to touch this document. Don't you think that also made things a little problematic for the MPs?
I'm not a legal mind, but if you want to change something, you need to first qualify it. Is it an entrenched clause that you want to touch, or is it just an ordinary clause? If it's an ordinary clause, yes, the MPs can. But if it's something that's entrenched, we, the people, reign supreme. Hence, we are a republic. And that must be respected. The rights of us, the polity, must be respected by those that we send. 2 million Gambians cannot sit inside the assembly. And that's why we divide our country into constituents and have people to represent our interests. But in this case, I believe the greater good's interest has been derailed. I believe the greater good's interest has been made an orphan.
The one stakeholder, I mean, that has come under heavy bashing, heavy criticism is the Constitutional Review Commission. They were the people that are tasked to come up with this document. They came up with it, and clearly people are not impressed. They think that they didn't do a good job, and this is why it failed. What do you make of their role? Do you think they did a good job?
Well, I think, once again, the dereliction of duty. The people who created the act put safeguards on who should be chosen. We went through a process, went through a vetting, went through nominations and appointment. We cannot wait until the 11th hour and start questioning, one, the integrity or the competence of the people in there. It's a total failure, and wherever there is failure, there has to be accountability. Gambians as a whole, we have a collective responsibility. In our collective responsibility, we have individual accountability. And in this individual accountability, the parliament plays a big role. My problem with it is the president is the sponsor-in-chief of this document. It's his administration. So when this document fails at parliament, it's a failure on him. What he should have done if he believed in the document was at the 11th hour have a national address to state his position without ambiguity to the public, and that would have put pressure on the people who voted no. But silence to me is consent, and the president has clearly in explicit terms show us where his interests lied. And not only that, immediately after that, we have seen his party militants jubilating for the failure of this document. That means our transition is dead, and therefore Gambia need to regroup. Make sure election 2021 will be the beginning of a transition to the new Gambia we wanted. Because the new Gambia we wanted the economic gangsters to be penalized. We wanted the criminal enterprise in uniform to be penalized. Oh no, what did we get? The economic gangsters and the criminal enterprise in uniform are today at the helm of government, at the nerve center of where decisions are made, and it's a mockery to justice and what we collectively fought for and aspired post December 4th, 2016.
And what do you make of the president's eerie silence? I mean, this happened, massive development. The president, what we've seen is been busy moving around the country. I've been launching either surveying or flagging off or inaugurating projects. But there cannot be a more important project than this one. But what we have seen is that the president has not said a word about it, even to seize that one particular moment to, address this issue. He has not done that. What do you make of that?
Politics is the second oldest profession apart from prostitution. But in as much as it's the second oldest profession, it has courage of conviction and morality as its guiding principle and compass. The president, in my view, has opted for self-preservation and self-perpetuation. And in so doing, he has put self over the interests of the greater good. His supporters may say that's not the case. But if you're looking at everything that has happened to date, height of a pandemic, the Gambia having the highest per capita in terms of mortality, the Gambia having the highest per capita in terms of infection in this sub-region, and you look at the amounts of monies they have spent in your name and my name and the name of kids that are yet unborn, shows that the interest is not the greater good but personal perpetuation.
Personal perpetuation. Now, what we have also seen is that the government wants, at least we have seen signs of political will. You may not entirely agree with this. The claim is that, okay, the president and his cabinet ministers are all complicit in this act. Some would call it treasonous. I hear some people commenting saying it's treasonous. But what I want to ask is, because clearly the justice minister, I spoke with him today, and what he told me was that they are trying to push hard to come up with a way of ensuring that this thing goes back to parliament. They want to do this by way of appointing an independent body. I don't know what you really make of that, because what
law is he using to appoint that independent body? Who gives him that mandate?
Myself, I'm a little confused, because you have the CRC. There cannot be a more independent body than the CRC. Where the CRC failed, what other independent body would?
The CRC didn't fail. The sponsors of the transition process, meaning the executive, because they are the drivers of Gambia's transition process. They haven't embraced the instrument of the creation of CRC and the outcome and the offshoot of what CRC has created. They haven't endorsed and nurtured it. But back to your question. You said the cabinet. I cannot blame the cabinet. The cabinet are mere proxies of the president who are not appointed or directly responsible to the polity. We elected a president and members of parliament. So therefore, our scrutiny as the polity, the people, is back to those people. If those people do bad, the cabinet, it will tell on the president, and we will punish the president if we feel or see fit. So that's the president's problem. That's why people serve at his will and his caprices.
So now they want to press ahead and find time, because they are saying it's still possible. We have about 14 months to elections. It's still possible that it goes back. But the fact is that is clearly a lack of consensus. That is why this draft constitution failed. Now they want to ensure that there is consensus the next time it goes to parliament, and they want to do this by way of getting a body of independent, people to really spearhead that. But what I'm saying is, what do you make of that? The fact that that is the approach that they want to take, because clearly we have seen the pressure, we have seen the European Union not clearly impressed, not clearly.
No one is clearly impressed.
Not impressed at all, and that kind of like would really put pressure on the government to deliver on this the next time. But do you really feel that this approach is good at all?
Well, you made mention of one word: consensus. Consensus building comes with good faith. If we are serious about this constitution, we need to put personalities outside of it. We don't make a constitution to tailor-make or suit a person. We make a constitution to withstand the test of time and give Gambians a suitable social contract that will make us live together as a people with a collective destiny, and to be our brothers and sisters keepers, so that we have a national identity instead of the tribal nuances and other things we have been seeing. So if we want consensus, let us forget about an individual's interest and look at the greater good's interest. And if the president is serious, anyone who is supporting this president, if they are serious and they have the courage of conviction and a little bit of conscience, the president and his men should know, and his minions should know, that 2 terms is the basic foundation of any good governance. This current constitution accords him, the draft accords him 2 terms. Why are they thinking of 3 terms? It means he is a violator of good governance architecture and also the principle of having good governance. Why should he even think that if it's not retroactive, I cannot have 3 terms? That is not only folly and foolhardy, but it is selfish.
It is selfish. Now, clearly, it's not just the... Well, I mean, one MP who spoke to the media, and what he said, clearly, an ardent support of the president, and what he said was, the CRC was told what they should put in this charter. That is to ensure...
Who told CRC that?
They made their suggestions.
But they are a minority in the grand scheme of things. 2 million Gambians. They cannot dictate.
So you mean the president and his group?
Look, the president is an ordinary Gambian with the privilege that has been accorded to him by you and me electing him in office, but that doesn't make him superior to you. He is first among equals. Every Gambian has the same power and right under our constitution. He only happens to have a privilege to serve us, and that privilege doesn't translate to power and dominion over you or me. That has to be made known. That's why a few days ago, when I read from your newspaper that the president is giving, and I said, where are the journalists, including Fatu Network? You guys need to check that. That's a fact check, and it's a lie, and it needs to be put to check. The president cannot give what he doesn't own. Yes. This is our commonwealth and ours. Yes. The government of the Gambia is gifting to vulnerable families in our society. So it's us helping the weaker ones, and that is the social contract we want. The president cannot give Gambians.
Okay, and you needed that to be fact checked. We will see. But then I think that even in America, when they were giving these relief checks to citizens, Trump would come out and say, I'm giving American development.
No. So really, Donald Trump signed the checks. No.
Signs the checks.
Look. There is a duty. The journalists have a duty of care.
Yes.
The duty of care is to make sure that information going out to the public is filtered and make sure that there is no ambiguity and it's not distorted. The utterances of the president distorts the fact, and what it does, it makes you and me not equitable, because it's your headline. I am going by your headline. The president is giving. The government is the government means we the people. We constitute government. The president is just one part of government.
Yes.
So it's the entire government, the legislature, the judiciary, the executive are giving. So it is the country that's giving to its people. When you say the president, you have misplaced and you have misrepresented
do you know
the
that
facts.
That is a direct quote. The president said, I will give every Gambian this money.
I will. My government will give.
He said, I will.
My government will give. I will respectfully bow down for him and say, thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
I will give. I will say, Mr. President, you cannot give me what you don't own.
Yes.
If he give me his personal monies, I don't have a problem. But what he was giving and gifting to Gambian is our common wealth. So let it be made clear.
And also, I think one thing that, was really explained to the people, I've seen political commentators coming out to say that, okay, the president didn't speak the truth because the money, in fact, is not his money. It was money that was given to the government by the world.
Regardless of who gives us, the resources belong to the people, because it is put into our consolidated revenue fund for further expenditure. So it's the people's money in the people's coffer. So when he dipped in the personal cookie jar of the Gambia, he is not giving us. We are gifting ourselves through our government. So when he said, my government, our government, the government, I will say, thank you. When he say, I
think the president personalized it to say, I am giving you this.
Political gains. The president was on an open political season, free for all to see. And mind you, he has opened the political season for the rest of the year, albeit in the middle of a pandemic.
How did he do that?
Well, you look at the crowds around him. Who is going to stop any party when they want to congregate? You see, there has to be one thing.
Still here.
Well, if a law is not enforced,
yes,
the assumption is the law doesn't exist. The law doesn't discriminate whether it's the president or any other group. It says we cannot congregate. And what we saw was congregation at its best definition. So what's good for the goose is equally good for the gander, but maybe other political actors and players and parties are more responsible than what we have seen with our government amidst the pandemic, and they will exercise restraint, but we still need to call it out and say, Mr. President and team, it's good to inaugurate a road, but you don't need an entourage to go there. Or defer it for another time. But he was on a political expedition where at the heartland of his hometown and home region. Fine, I don't have a problem, but this is not the time, period.
Do you think the president is doing a Donald Trump, going about, not really caring if people wear a face mask or not, or observe social distancing or not? Whatever happens, he will go ahead and hold outdoor meetings.
In all fairness, I don't think, I will not even equate him to Donald Trump. That will be an insult to him.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding, he needs to be fair to his conscience. He needs to be fair with his country. And he needs to make sure that, yes, I am eligible, because there are two things here. There is a moral question and a legal question. He has failed the moral question of serving past the 3 years. So that is with his conscience and his God. But legally, the supremacy of our constitution, which I believe has accorded him the right to be here for 5 years. So now there is two things. Him having a legal mandate to continue, and him flouting a contract he has with me. For me, he is not a man of his word, because he has flipped. But back to this campaign, he has the right. But this is not the time. And not only for him, but any other political person or entity.
To be fair to the president, what he said, someone might also argue that makes perfect sense. What he said was, this coronavirus is here to stay. It's not going away.
I agree.
And what he told his advisors and ministers is that we cannot just sit in our offices and not do nothing. We have to go out there.
Talk is cheap.
That is what he said.
Talk is cheap. If he believes in what he said, the first thing he should have done is to open the schools. The second thing he should have done is to open up the economy. Then the third thing, he then be going out there to follow up in his campaign. I would have believed that the statements he made, sequential. The first sequential action this government needed to take is to open up the schools.
What if you don't have a game plan?
Well, then if you don't have a game plan, prioritize your priorities. Before you go out on a campaign, make sure that Gambian kids are not suffering by not having lectures. You see, in life, everything is a priority. And what we have seen the president has prioritized his personal objectives. And the greater good objectives are secondary. Because the primary thing, if I were the president of this republic and I made a pronouncement that corona is here to stay, the first thing I will make sure is life goes back to normal, and first for the kids of this country. Secondly, the economy of the country. Third, the social activities where politics and politicking falls.
Okay, so now that's also clear. But what we have seen is that the president, is minded to grow his backbone politically, and he will continue, as he said, to embark upon more infrastructural projects. That is what he said. And he said the talkers, his critics, he said the talkers can continue talking, but he will continue doing the work.
More power to the president, more grease to the president. But I want to tell him one thing and remind him that gratitude starts with appreciating those that sacrifice to make you a president. And it was us who, lying under the hot sun, went out, bestowed our trust on an unknown person, hoping for a better and a brighter Gambia for all of us. So we are not against him, but we are against him for reneging on the obligation and contract he had with us. That political contract is what I happen to have a problem with him. But as a person, I love you, Mr. President. As a person, you are not my enemy. But as someone I have bestowed my trust on, you have failed me and failed me woefully.
How about, because also the president was in the middle of his tour when he decided to reshuffle the pack. What we have seen is fired some ministers, quickly dumped them in the foreign service, or if you like, consulted them, and then brought in this. But what we've seen is one of the people that was hired turned down the job. Were you aware of that?
You know, Nyang Njie doesn't mince his words. I am very pleased with the president's termination of the Minister of Trade.
Lamin Job, why?
I don't even know Lamin Job, but I am a person who goes by statistics and data.
That's an economist, of course.
Here is my problem, and the reason why I believe he made two critical decisions that were good: the youth ministry and the trade ministry. Gambia has suffered from March, and most likely it will take Gambia 36 months to have a turnaround for the plummeting economy we have had since March. And key to that is a buoyant and vibrant trade sector. And I'm sorry to say, I don't know the minister who was there, but for me, in my books, he wasn't fit for purpose. Now, the mere fact that the president has seen a problem there and tried to fix it, I say thank you, Mr. President, because when you fix it, you're fixing all of us, our pockets. So what he did...
But now, why would you fire your trade minister when you don't have one? Because the guy he took there said no to the job. What do you have to say about that?
Well,
Bakari is saying he's not going there.
Once again,
Clearly doesn't want the job.
Once again, the president needs to get better advisors. You see, the president should be executing, and he must have people too close to him that he shares his plans with, and they give him the best advice or alternatives. The issue is not about the individual Bakari, but the issue is the rule of law. The president has no right, based on the Central Bank Act, which promotes monetary independence and makes sure that even the fiscal authorities, the Ministry of Finance, cannot meddle with monetary operations. Therefore, the president must have known what are the triggers to move someone if I want to move them. So two things need to happen. Bakari must be willing and ready to move. Then a tribunal will not be set up. But if you set up a tribunal, you need three triggers.
Of course.
One is that the bank is bankrupt. Two, he happens to have a criminal record and more so a felony. Third, he has to be incapacitated and cannot carry out his functions. So someone must have told this to the president. It's a rookie mistake at that level, the highest apex in the country. Such a thing should not and must not happen. And in any other country, heads would have been rolling.
But
because the president should not.
Why is all these things proving too tricky for the president? Because clearly what we have seen in the, for example, Yakuma Jere case, it happened at some point the president lost that battle. And now this man is also coming out to rely on a law to say that, hey, you have no right to remove me from my role.
I am an economist and I believe in value. If you have a $5 C advisor, you get a $5 C advice. If you have a $1 million C advisor, you get a $1 million C advice.
What are you trying to suggest?
Well, I'm sorry, the president has underrated and underachieving advisors. No offense, it's not personal, but we need to call a spade a spade. The so-called people I see touted as presidential advisors, I don't think they can take this country forward by giving the president good, sound advice.
How about when this move at all is not based upon the advice of any of the advisors? It's the president who decided to take this decision.
Well, the buck stops at him, and it's his responsibility. Mind you, the Gambia didn't vote for an advisor. The Gambia didn't vote for a vice president. The Gambia didn't vote for a minister or a PS. If everything goes well with those people, kudos and the claps goes to the president. If it fails equally, it goes to him and him alone. That's why I said we have a collective responsibility and an individual accountability, and the president must be accountable for things that fall under his purview and remit.
Sanyang, back to the draft constitution. What do you want now? Do you want it to come back to parliament, or do you want us to stick? I mean, is it all over for you? We just go by the 1997. What would you want? What would you prefer?
Well, Gambians who are clapping today are clapping for their misery and downfall. And ignorance is the problem in this country. If 1997 wasn't problematic, we wouldn't ask for a new constitution. Just like the Americans will say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it was broke. Why? It was overly amended and it was skewed to fit a personal purpose. Yes. I will just go back to electioneering tools. The IEC, we want a country of proportional representation. How on earth can we have Combo South and we only have few representatives out of Combo South, and Combo South is the Florida, Pennsylvania, and California of the Gambia. If you cannot win Combo South, you cannot be there. You look at Fonyi, 5 constituents with this much population. Serekunda West or East is more than basically the whole of Fonyi. And how many seats do they have at the parliament? So the people who are clapping today are clapping their downfall because they don't understand the grand scheme of things. Why? We have personalized an instrument that would have been the cause and the foundation of a good social contract for us Gambians, so that we can have equity, we can have fairness, and we can have justice for all, irrespective of your social orientation, your economic orientation, or your regional orientation. And that's what we have killed. Do I want it back? Sooner or later, it's going to come back. That's why I am saying that 2021 will be the beginning of a transition to usher in a new Gambia.
2021. What
Yes.
are you seeing in 2021? What are you seeing when you go to bed? What do you see?
What I want and what I see are two different things. If wishes were horses, all beggars be riding.
Yes.
What I want, yes, because the Janneh Commission has been buried and dealt a blow. Yesterday, I saw a document from Sierra Leone, and it has shown the mockery and the disregard and indifference to the good rule of law that Gambia should have abided by. Everyone who has been afflicted by the commission in Sierra Leone have been told to step aside. Current serving functionaries.
They've all been fired, yes.
Well, relieved.
Relieved
Yes.
is fired. That's
So,
the diplomatic word.
if the Gambia can give portfolios to people who are deemed to be known economic violators and physical violators and still let them continue, it means our transition agenda is just a lip service but not a reality. So what do I want is, I want a better Gambia. What do I see? I've seen a fragmented society that hasn't converged to build a new country. And for the simple reason that the political class haven't driven the transition agenda collectively, not only the president, collectively. Because when we signed on the dotted lines in the polling booth that I signed for a group. everyone has ditched that group and have left it with one person, and he's doing whatever he wants. So the collective failure is the collective failure of the political class. Everyone who bankrolled this current president have failed Gambians, and they have to pay for that price.
Nyang Njie, commentator, economist, thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. That's
right.
Nyang Njie there. So